What if nuclear weapons were never invented? Imagine a world where nuclear weapons never existed. No atomic bombs, no mushroom clouds, no nuclear standoffs. A world where humanity never unlocked the most destructive force it has ever created. How different would history be? To answer this, we need to go back to the early 20th century. Nuclear weapons were not invented by accident. They emerged from scientific discovery. Physicists discovered that splitting an atom released enormous energy. At first, this knowledge was purely academic, but during World War II, everything changed. Fear drove innovation. Countries raced to gain an advantage. And the result was the atomic bomb. But imagine this discovery never happened. Or imagine scientists never realized its military potential. What would change? Let's start with World War II. Without nuclear weapons, the war would still be brutal. Millions would still die. Cities would still be destroyed. But Japan would not face atomic bombings. The war in the Pacific might last longer. A land invasion could occur instead. This could result in even more casualties. History shows us something uncomfortable. Even without nuclear weapons, humans are capable of massive destruction. Now let's talk about the Cold War. This is where the biggest difference appears. The Cold War was shaped by nuclear fear. Two superpowers faced each other, not with direct war, but with the threat of total annihilation. This concept is called nuclear deterrence. The idea was simple. If both sides had nuclear weapons, neither would dare use them. This fear prevented direct conflict. So what happens without nuclear weapons? The United States and the Soviet Union would still compete. But instead of standoffs, they might fight openly. Large-scale conventional wars could break out in Europe. Asia might see more invasions. Proxy wars could become full wars. Ironically, nuclear weapons may have prevented some global wars by making war too dangerous. Now let's talk about global power. Nuclear weapons reshaped the balance of power. Countries with nuclear weapons gained influence. Countries without them felt vulnerable. Without nuclear weapons, military strength would depend on conventional forces. Large armies, aircraft, naval power. Superpowers might dominate smaller nations more aggressively. Some countries might be invaded simply because there is no ultimate deterrent. Now let's talk about fear. Nuclear weapons created constant global anxiety. Children practiced nuclear drills. Cities prepared fallout shelters. The world lived under the shadow of instant destruction. Without nuclear weapons, this specific fear disappears. People would worry about war, but not about total extinction in minutes. Mental health, culture, and politics would develop differently. Now let's talk about science and energy. Nuclear research didn't just create bombs, it also led to nuclear energy, medical imaging, cancer treatments. Without nuclear weapons, nuclear science might still exist, but develop more slowly. Some medical advancements might be delayed. Clean energy options might be fewer. The environmental impact could go either way. No nuclear accidents tied to weapons, but more reliance on fossil fuels. Now let's talk about the risk of extinction. Nuclear weapons are one of the few technologies that could end civilization quickly. A full nuclear war could collapse ecosystems, destroy agriculture, and end modern society. Without nuclear weapons, this risk is removed. Human extinction becomes less likely due to war, but not impossible. Climate change, biological threats, conventional wars. The danger shifts, but it doesn't disappear. Now let's talk about morality. Nuclear weapons forced humanity to confront its own power. For the first time, we created something capable of destroying ourselves. This led to treaties, global cooperation, and discussions about ethics. Without nuclear weapons, this moment of reflection might never happen. Humanity might feel less urgency to control its own violence. Now let's ask the big question. Would the world be more peaceful without nuclear weapons? The answer is not simple. Nuclear weapons caused fear, but fear prevented war. They created danger, but also restraint. Without them, wars might be more frequent, longer, and deadlier over time. But they would likely be less sudden, less final. So, what if nuclear weapons were never invented? The world might feel safer, but behave more violently. Power struggles would continue. Conflicts would still exist. What changes most is how close humanity stands to its own destruction. The real question is not whether nuclear weapons should exist. The real question is whether humanity can be trusted with its own inventions. Because once knowledge exists, it cannot be erased, only controlled. And history shows that restraint is the hardest weapon to master.